Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and LEGO Transformers is back with Soundwave. Join me for an early review of the brand new Soundwave set, which I may dare say could be the best LEGO Transformer set they have ever released. And yes, that is some steep competition there. Bumblebee last year was alright, it wasn't my favorite, but I think it achieved what it was trying to do. But Optimus Prime is genuinely an amazing set. And so for me to say Soundwave might be even better is saying a lot. You see, this set has it all. Posability, way more posability than Optimus Prime. A full transformation feature, sound effects, 2 different side builds that transform in and out of cassette tapes. This is so much fun. So join me for an early look at the brand new LEGO Transformers Soundwave right now. Okay, so this is the brand new LEGO Transformers Soundwave, set number 10358, retails for $190 US, 180 euros, and will come with 1,505 pieces when it launches on August 1st. Now, I will be completely honest. When they first said they're going to be doing a Soundwave LEGO set, I was like, okay, that's kinda cool, but come on, how cool could it be if he literally just transforms into a giant box? And I have to say, I take back every single word I said against this set, because after building it, I realized that this is kinda peak. Soundwave not just comes with the full buildable transformer that you can transform into the cassette player as well as the mech form, but he also comes with the companions Ravage and Laserbeak, plus a play button to actually play sound effects, which kind of makes sense given that he is Soundwave. You need to be able to hear those sounds. One of my favorite things about the set is that the 2 companions, Laserbeak and Ravage, can actually transform back into cassette tapes, and there's associated weapons for them as well, so technically this is 3 Transformers in 1. It comes with a really nice display plaque too, plus a miniaturized version of Soundwave, which they haven't really done in any of the other Transformer sets, but looks really good on display, and it even comes with an extra printed tile to display either one of the 2 companions inside of the cassette player itself, which I think is just a really nice touch that adds a bit of extra detail to the set itself. I'm actually going to start by focusing in on the 2 companions because you could kind of consider them the smaller side builds of the set, so to speak, and the first one in there is Ravage, that is kind of the dog-like creature on the inside, and then of course Laserbeak is the flying bird one. They all feature printed detail on the sides of the slope elements to showcase each of the eyes of the characters, which is really nice, and pressing a button on the top of Soundwave allows you to open up the cassette player and actually eject the cassettes themselves. I'm going to start by deploying Ravage here, and Ravage is slightly more complicated to deploy than Laserbeak, which kind of just unfurls in a couple of folds. Ravage takes a little bit because each of the legs are fully articulatable, so you can move all the legs on the Technic pins there, and then of course even angle the feet back and forth, but when it's done, it actually does look really good. And of course, you do have a tail sticking out of the side, and the addition of these 2 laser guns on the side of the model to really make it feel like it is fully armored and weaponed up. I do wish there was a place to store the laser guns somewhere on the model when you're not using them, but honestly, given that those are really the only 2 additional components that you need to actually have set aside, I'm not necessarily going to knock it too much for that, because they are very, very small. Going on to Laserbeak, this one is a lot more blocky and robotic compared to Ravage, who actually looks pretty good as a buildable small LEGO dog. Kind of reminds me of a similar scale of the LEGO Vikings Fenrir Wolf, which does look quite good as a build. Laserbeak, on the other hand, definitely does feel like it is supposed to be kind of a rectangular cassette tape that's sort of been unfurled out, but I think as side builds, they both are really good, and having that extra transformation feature is a really nice touch. It's also cool that all of the decals here are fully printed, so you have prints on the sides of the eyes for those curved slope elements, which is very rare for us to see. I've only really seen them print on the sides of those pieces for Speed Champion sets, and then you also have the Decepticon logo printed on a 1x1 tile, plus the cassette tape circular dish, the 2x2 tile element there, is also fully printed, so these do feel very deluxe. Let's go ahead and see what the transformation feature looks like for both of these, removing both of the weapons for the creatures here. Starting off with Ravage, you furl the head back, tuck the tail inwards, and then you kind of bend the leg assemblies upwards, and finally you kind of have to tuck in the legs. Technically you're supposed to tuck in the legs before bending that upwards, so you kind of have to fiddle with them a little bit. And again, this one is a bit more fiddly than the other one. It definitely is something that maybe doesn't look the most convincing when it's in the fully transformed form, because I guess you can kind of see like the light gray forms the edges of the cassette tape, but it is very obvious that those are legs that are kind of tucked in, and if you're not careful, you can tend to break off some pieces when transforming it, but as it is, it's alright for a transformation. But then Laserbeak, on the other hand, is really impressive in the way it transforms. The wings are basically just mounted on the curved tile elements, so you can kind of bring the feet upwards, fold the beak back, and then you just kind of push them inwards, and it just tucks away so perfectly. It looks really, really good in cassette tape form, and I genuinely was really impressed by how that one looked like inside the model itself. Of course, with the transformations done, they do look like average, ordinary cassette tapes, but perhaps there may be more than meets the eye when it comes to these two little companions. Let's go ahead and place them inside of Soundwave himself, and actually start off this review by taking a look at the full-on transformation for Soundwave. Before we even get into the play features or the articulation, I feel like we have to do that transformation just one time to begin with. So, after tucking in the two different characters there, let's go ahead and see what that transformation itself looks like. And full disclosure, the transformation you're about to see is the very first time I not only did it on camera, but did the transformation in general, so I will go a lot slower than normal, and at the end of this video, we're going to see just how quickly I can transform it after practicing a few times. You start off by removing the two different guns, the cannon on the shoulder, as well as the blaster he's holding, and yes, there are spots to place those on the model itself, which is very nice. Next up, you kind of have to get him in a standard pose. The feet themselves tuck inwards, and it's a really clever mechanism to make the feet have friction while they tuck in, but actually unfurl some armor while they're pulled outwards. Then you have these panels that kind of swing back to the side. They're the most finicky parts of the model for me, and honestly, if there was one thing I'd want to change about how this model is built, it's those CMF panels on the back of the legs. They kind of feel a little bit awkward in both forms, and they do tend to fall off a lot. Then you unclip the shoulders here, which are just mounted on a hinge element. They kind of just swing backwards like so, and later on they will clip into the legs, but we'll take a look at that once we actually get a chance to do that. From there, you splay the legs out to the side, so you've got all the legs kind of having him do the splits here, and the legs themselves can rotate upwards because they are mounted on specialized joints that allow them to fully rotate. So once he's doing the splits there, you go ahead and rotate the legs just like so, and then you can probably see where this is going. You then can bend it at the knees to allow the two sides of it to fold on inwards, and it kind of just perfectly fits into place. And you can really see this is how the transformation goes. There's no real way to actually attach those in other than clipping the back arms to them, so you can see you can kind of have to get the clip right on there. 1 and 2, right there, you have it fully clipped in. Finally, you've got these two shoulder mounts here, which were on the back of the ankles, but first you fold in these CMF plates right there to actually let it sit flat, and then you take these pieces, put them on the shoulders, they just kind of slot in there, and the last thing you have to deal with is the head and then the guns. So the hands just kind of tuck away behind there, but the head itself you fold backwards. You actually have to rotate the head around backwards the first time, so I didn't really notice that the first time I was doing this, but there you go. Rotate the head backwards in place, and then you can go ahead and close it up, and it's basically fully transformed. The last thing you need to do is go ahead and place the two guns in mounts that they have on the back of the model itself, and it's really clever in the way they've actually been able to do this, where you remove the tip of the gun here, you place the tip on the back of the cassette player, just clip it on right there like so. And then you take one of the barrels of the guns and just place it in here. I accidentally removed the Technic mount of the gun as well. Wasn't supposed to do that, that's just supposed to stay on the hands. And then you just take the other shoulder mounted barrel and kind of just put it back in a similar spot where it was before, but this time it is just on a different amount of studs, so it's attached to the legs instead of the shoulder. And with that, you have it fully transformed, and this is the cassette player. It's a really cool build, and it goes together really nicely. Honestly, for all the jokes I was making prior to the set's launch saying, oh, how interesting could it be if you literally just turned it into a box, I gotta say, it's actually really impressive how clean this looks as a fully rectangular build and then fully unfurling out into robot form. The only thing for me is that, yep, the hands definitely do feel very obvious when you're looking at it from the back. In fact, the back side of this cassette player is really not the best way to look at it because it is very clearly a robot tucked away, but from the front and most angles on the front, it actually does look really good. And there you have it. The two cassette players and the cassette tapes can go on inside the player here, and it actually is, again, fully printed for that windscreen there with the Decepticon logo, which is really nice. The windscreen itself, I will mention, does come in its own bag to prevent it from being scratched up, and to prevent the logo from being scratched as well, which is really nice. Unfortunately, all the other decals are stickers, so the recording and battery icon, the stereo, microcassette, and recorder, the play button, the right and left buttons, as well as the stickers on the side, those are all stickers and decals, but everything else that's really important, like the logos, are printed. Now, let's take a look at that transformation feature the other way. The first thing you do is reassemble the gun there, and then you remove the shoulder panels, then you actually detach the two shoulder elements after you fold down the collectible minifigure stand pieces there. You detach these from the clips, so 1 and 2, and again, this is only my very first time transforming it on camera, so it will get a lot faster as we go on to the rest of the video, and you will see that. Then, splay the legs outwards, have them be doing the splits, move the knees upwards, so you're going like there, then you rotate the legs outwards like so. You have that really clever function where, again, you're going to be able to splay the legs outwards, but one of the downsides here is that these extra pieces do tend to fall off a lot. Those were, again, the most finicky parts about the model, and while transforming it, I did notice that they did cause me the most problems in kind of just feeling like they didn't really sit into a proper place. Even when it is in the fully transformed mode, they kind of just are at a slight angle. Next up, you then fold the feet downwards, and this is a very clever function where, as you can see, you're basically pulling these Technic components out to make it look like the legs have full detail folded in. Then, you bring the arms outwards, so you actually rotate the arms back into place. These are just on hinges, so then you can move these out into angles, rotate the fists like so, place the gun in the proper spot there, the shoulder-mounted cannon just kind of sits on top of there, and finally, you move out the back box and the head can swing on outwards to have him be ready for battle. And altogether, this is it. It's a really solid build, and I really love just how clean the transformation feature is. Really happy with how posable he is as well, and we're about to take a look at that. But now, let's focus in on the model in the fully transformed mode. Now, there is one complaint I do have about the transformation here, and the thing is that, unfortunately, the gun itself does not really support its own weight when you're holding it in the hand. And that's going to be really obvious when I play around with this model and actually try to get it into different poses. It tends to kind of rotate downwards a ton, it falls over, and it never falls out, but it is just really, really easy to just fall downwards. That being said, as far as literally everything else is concerned, I am exceptionally pleased with the posability of this model. It just feels so alive, and a lot of that is because they basically had to give this model knees and articulatable ankles just to be able to make it facilitate the transformation feature. Really, the only downside is there is no real way to sway the legs forwards. You can only kind of bend them backwards and side to side, and that is just because of the way the transformation feature works with the joints. But as far as everything else is concerned, I am incredibly pleased with just how posable this model is. You can see that you have that sound brick on the back there, and we'll be taking a look and listening to some of the sounds it can make. And again, just want to point out some very minor nitpicks here is that these panel pieces here just tend to fall off super easily, and they don't feel like they sit into place absolutely right. You can kind of see they're bending outwards a little bit, and it's a very minor nitpicky thing, but especially as you're going around the corners, they kind of wedge themselves outwards, and when you have the legs perfectly straight, they don't actually fit in this position. That being said, if you have the legs splayed outwards just a little bit like I have right now, they actually do look pretty good. Now, in terms of articulation, they actually gave it double jointed elbows, which I really appreciate, utilizing a dark blue recolor of the brand new kind of remolded version of the Bionicle handpiece, which they introduced back in 2021 or 2 or so. So I guess it's not that new, but nice to get that in dark blue. The articulation on the hands is really good, and the head itself can kind of be raised and lowered depending on how you want to place it. You can push the neck downwards to have the head just be very mounted low to the torso and have it just purely rotate. rotate, or you can actually raise the neck upwards a little bit, which is nice. Unfortunately, here you can see I'm demonstrating the problem with the gun piece, where clearly it just doesn't support the weight just having the hand mounted on a single Technic pin, and there we go, I actually knocked it over there by accident, but it is sturdy enough that even after being fully knocked over, basically nothing fell off except for the shoulder mounted gun. But there you can see that if you're not careful with how you place the blaster in the hand, it is just really easy to have it rotate downwards. Like, it is just flopping all over the place. I don't know if that's just a problem with my copy or if everybody else's is going to be like that, but it is something I did want to point out. Leg articulation wise, you can have him kick to the side as well as rotate the leg back and forth, and of course you can bend the knees backwards and forwards as well, which is really nice and adds a lot to the posability. But again, the knee being there isn't really technically supposed to be used in play like this. It's really only there to facilitate the transformation feature, but I don't know, I think it holds itself up okay to have the knee there, so it's not that big of a deal. Again, I'm a big fan of the way they were able to do the articulation on the feet there, which kind of lets that armor panel slide inwards. It's super clever, and it just feels very mechanical in the way that it's built to allow you to move the foot backwards and forwards and also splay the foot side to side. If you notice, if you want to get this in a pure standing form, I did have to tuck those CMF panel armor pieces on the insides of the legs backwards, but I think that is technically the official configuration for it. I just think it looks a little bit better when you have it splayed out, and you actually have it armored up a little bit more. So when you have the legs splayed out, you can move those panels once they're rotated outwards as well, move the panels to the front a bit, and it looks a lot better. My personal favorite way to pose it is very simple. You just splay the legs outwards by one clip, you also have them rotated outwards by one click as well, and then you bend the knees by one click, and it's pretty perfect as it is. Altogether, the only problem I have with the posability is the fact that the gun just keeps falling over. I don't really know how that got past the quality control here. It's really the only minor thing about the set, but again, if you have the gun like pointing up like this, it just looks okay, and then man, does that look good as a pose. Dare I say, it even looks a little bit better than Optimus Prime did fully posed up, because you've got the knees, you've got all the elbows, and you have the ability to make it look like this is a fully posable character, and I am a big fan of that. But that's not all. Of course, you do have that giant play button, and now I think it's time to maybe hear some of the noises that this can make on its own. So that was a solid minute and a half worth of pushing the button, and I actually think that we got most of the different phrases there, but clearly there were still more. This set has a ton of different randomized phrases every time you push the button, somewhat similar to the ideas Retro Radio and the Harry Potter Talking Sorting Hat, and I find that to be really cool, and the perfect one to have for Soundwave, although now, I kinda hope that all future Transformer sets will have a sound box because it would be really cool to hear them talking. I only wish they had that sound box for something like Optimus Prime, because I would have loved to hear the voice coming out of that. And obviously the sound box does add a little bit onto the price. This does pack some electronics on the inside, but for a set like this, I'm pretty happy with it. especially when you consider most of the other sets that do have that sound box are pretty egregiously overpriced, and this one is actually not that bad, all things considered. Now let's see how quickly I can transform it back into box form, and spoiler alert, this clocks in at around a full minute for the transformation feature, a little over a minute actually, so obviously you can probably get it down to a little quicker than that, but I just did want to point out that it is a fairly involved transformation feature. Like, there are a good number of moving parts here. There are things that you have to make sure clip on. You do save some time by having a lot of the joints fall into place automatically, but then you waste time by having to like slot in the cannon into place. So again, this is the full transformation about as quickly as I can personally do it while still making it look good, and we'll do the reverse in a little bit as well. Altogether, I do want to step back as we wrap up the review here and talk a little bit about the value of this set. Once again, this set does retail for 190 US dollars, 180 euros, or 160 British pounds, and comes with 1,505 pieces. On paper, that's not fantastic, but honestly, especially given the fact that this did have a lot of engineering go into it, it also has that fantastic sound box as well, and it isn't nearly as ridiculously overpriced as a lot of the other sound box themed LEGO sets. I'm pretty happy with this build. I genuinely think it is the most transformable and posable Transformers set we have seen to date, and that definitely has a lot of steep competition. Optimus Prime was fantastic, and Bumblebee did exactly what you would want it to do, especially for a G1 version of the model. I know a lot of people now are going to be asking, well, where's Megatron? And I think that the answer is, unfortunately, Megatron either transforms into a gun or a tank, which LEGO clearly doesn't really want to do, but I would argue that just do Megatron's tank form. It isn't like a realistic tank, just do like a sci-fi inspired tank form, and they've done that a million times before. Every single Ninjago vehicle with treads is about as tanky as Megatron's tank form, especially if they wanted to do the one that we saw in like Transformers 1, which was very G1 inspired. So I don't know, I think they could absolutely do Megatron. If you don't want to call it a tank, just call it like his battle form or battle vehicle or something. They could absolutely do it. I feel like that one has to be next. Like, they've done Optimus, they've done Bumblebee. Okay, those ones are two very iconic ones. Starscream, maybe. I think they could easily do that one, especially now that they've done Lloyd's transforming jet mech, and I would love to see that, but I can't believe we haven't gotten Megatron yet, so I'm hoping that if this is successful, we're going to be able to see that at some point in the future. Altogether, I am very happy with this build. This really blew me away, and as someone who was kind of clowning on the notion of having a LEGO Soundwave set for a while, like, I remember talking to my LEGO friends about it when the leaks first came out, and I'm like, oh, well, how cool could it be? It literally just turns into a box. Well, I take back all of those words, because that box transformation is actually really, really cool, and most importantly of all, it's actually posable and looks good on display in robot form. It doesn't feel like the articulation is limited really at all because of the transformation. In fact, the transformation enhances the articulation, having it have knees to be able to move and bend the knees and kind of make it look like it's walking around. So altogether, I'm a fan of this model. I obviously am very, very partial to buildable LEGO action figures. I grew up on Bionicle. This whole channel started basically with Bionicle and Ninjago inspired videos, but I love myself some brick-built action figures, so this is right up my alley. And I've always said that if I wasn't into LEGO, I probably would be into Transformers, so seeing them come together and merge into one form is so much fun. That's all for this review, but be sure to subscribe and dock in for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks so much, and bye for now. And let me know in the comments, what do you think of this set?